Hi, my name is Valeria Pali. I'm the Vice President of the National Psychological Association of Ukraine. Unfortunately, I couldn't be present with you during the conference online, but I will be pleased to share with you my video pre-recorded presentation. Now I'm going to share my slides, and I think that we can start. Yeah, here we go. Professional associations, a cornerstone of the global psychology community, are prevalent in nearly every country where psychology is advancing. Their primary objectives encompass evidence-based science and practice expansion, specialist support, collaborative creation of work environments, and advocacy for legislative amendments to enhance mental health services. These associations champion community interests, contribute to professional standards development, facilitate colleagues' professional growth, promote psychology, and foster international relationships for sharing best practices. This grassroots approach, familiar to many United individuals, in a collective effort to effect positive change. Such approaches are found in both developed and developing countries. In the spring of 2022, following the onset of a full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, the issue of cooperation with Russia emerged at various levels, including within psychological communities and universities. The question to exclude or continue cooperation sparked numerous discussions with arguments such as science is apolitical, psychology transcends politics, people in Russia also require psychological assistance, or not all citizens support the war. While these arguments hold some validity, the actual extent of specialist involvement in state processes in countries like Russian Federation is unknown to colleagues from other nations. And today I'm going to tell you a little bit about Russian Psychological Society and its connection with government, propaganda, corruption, and war crimes. The Russian Psychological Society is the leading professional community of psychologists that unites specialists with university education who work in various areas of psychology, clinical, development, school, and others. RPS is the legal successor of the Russian Psychological Society of the Imperial Moscow University and the Society of Psychologists of the USSR. RPS is also the most famous professional psychological community in Russia, which is or was the only representative of the country in various international associations. And information about what we will talk today is open sources. If you need proofs, write to me and I will be happy to provide you with information. When I was little, the entire Ukraine, as many post-Soviet countries, watched a grand soap opera, Santa Barbara, for a decade. Many years, every evening after work, we were sitting and watching this series. The limited number of heroes were united by family and love ties. They support each other or betray in this film. Perhaps the presentation will look like a soap opera with relatives, love connections, and so on, but it's just investigation and it's truth. I can talk about this topic for hours, and now I will share some just interesting facts with you. I know more and we will share more information for international community. And I understand that our time is limited. So I will tell you about some of the members of the RPS, and these people, not only members of RPS, these people are board representatives, and that's important. Perhaps the most important details is that RPS is affiliated with the Russian criminal government, engaged in propaganda and actively incites enmity against Ukraine. Yulia Shoigu, the candidate for psychological science, has been the vice president of the RPS for a long time. She is also head of the Department of Extreme Psychology at Lomonosov Moscow State University, director at the Center for Emergency Psychological Assistance of the Ministry of Civil Protection, Emergency Situation and Disaster Relief of the Russian Federation since 2002, deputy head of the Essex RPS Commission, honored rescuer of the Russian Federation, and eldest daughter of the ex-minister of defense of the Russian Federation, Sergei Shoigu. By the way, Sergei Shoigu was the minister since 2012 till 2024, and he is currently the secretary of the Security Council of Russia and still engaged in all state processes in Russia. And Sergei Shoigu is the same Minister of Defense under whose leadership a war was started in which hundreds of thousands of military and civilian Ukrainians, as well as fellow citizens of the vice president of the RPS, Yulia Shoigu, died. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, Sergei Shoigu, the ex-minister, is a honorary member of the RPS. His photo is posted on the website is an appropriate section together with founders of scientific psychology such as Wilhelm Wundt or Hermann Helmholtz. In July 2024, this web page was temporarily deleted from the official RPS website, and the RPS representatives did the same in 2022 when NPA raised the question of membership in the European Federation, and they tried to hide some information from international colleagues. And this year they did the same because NPA and other colleagues from Lithuania raised the question about RPS membership in a big international community. But this page still founds through web archives of Russian Psychological Society, and you can try to do the same using this link. The husband of RPS Vice President Yulia Shoigu is Alexei Zakharov, ex-prosecutor of the Moscow region and since March 2019, Deputy Prosecutor General of the Russian Federation. Is it possible to preserve the political neutrality of the organization by having such influential people in the associated organization? This is a rhetorical question, and the answer is too obvious that hardly. However, blood links are not all the connections with the professional community, with the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation and the ruling elite. Yulia Barabanshikova, a doctor of psychological science and head of the Department of Psychological Work of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, is also a subordinate of the Minister of Defense. In general, the sphere of scientific and practical interests of many members of the board of this professional community lies in the field of military psychology and youth education based on the content of the activity patriotic education. Thus, Sergei Kandybovich, another vice president of the RPS, who once again became, attention, Vladimir Putin trusted confidant in the last elections, is the head of the Commission of the Patriotic, Spiritual, and Moral Education of Children and Youth. On the eve of the full-scale invasion in October 2022, during public discussion about the text of the draft law that should regulate the activities of psychologists in Russia, he noted that according to his beliefs, attention, the activities of a psychologist should be aimed of creating or encouraging protest, should be aimed at stopping protest sentiments among citizens against the current government, the president and the government of the Russian Federation. On the contrary, in its activities, a psychologist should strive to minimize and suppress any protest sentiments in society and among its individual members in order to ensure the stable development of the Russian Federation. And psychologists themselves, who are seen in anti-Russian and anti-government actions or statements, should be deprived of the right to engage in professional psychological activities. It should be one of the certification criteria, said Sergei Kandybovich. Another association board member, Dr. Alexander Karayany, is a professor of the Department of Psychology of Service Activities in the Institute of National Guard Forces. In one of the interviews with the Russian mass media, Karayany said that the special military operation participants will also need a special psychological operation. In one of his publications, he notes that participants in hostilities are mostly people charged with powerful energy, motivated to positively reorganize their lives. How? Psychologists, in cooperation with social workers, teachers, priests, and volunteers, must direct this energy in a creative direction. Which one? We don't know. It remains to be guessed. Other members of the board of RPS are active searching for solutions to support military. For example, on August 13, 2023, the already mentioned Vice President of RPS, Valentina Barabanщикова, as well as RPS board member Alla Shabultas and RPS President Yuri Zinchenko participated in the roundtable psychological assistance to participants of the special military operation, which took place within the framework of the International Military Technical Forum Army 2023. Should it be said that this event took place with the support of the first persons of the aggressor state? The current president of the RPS, Dr. Yuri Zinchenko, Dean of the Psychology Faculty of Lomonosov's Moscow State University, where Yulia Shойgu works, by the way, honorary president of the Association of Psychologists of Security Forces, is a member of many councils under President of the Russian Federation. I have a very long list. Psychologist Zinchenko was involved in drafting changes to the 2020 Russian Constitution, that version that allowed Putin to usurp power by nullifying presidential terms and a number of other changes. Zinchenko personally mentioned this in public interviews. Zinchenko also the author of the number of books about psychological informational operation about it's the equal of propaganda or misinformation, about terrorism and anti-terroristic acts in psychology and so on. He is co-chair of coordination board of the Society Knowledge, which spreads propaganda among Russian youth, and one of the author of the draft legislation for psychologists, the main aim of which is promote and motivate psychologists to disclose personal information about their clients. So it's very interesting. Since 2022, RPS has not only actively developed and been included in various state activities, but also expanded. In October 2023, the Russian Psychological Society took the initiative to establish its branch in the temporary occupied territory of Ukraine, the so-called DCR, Donetsk Civil Republic. In Ukraine, we call it DNR. And this territory, according to all international documents, is the occupied territory of Ukraine. Pavel Yermakov, a member of the board, is responsible for the establishment of the regional body in this Ukrainian occupied oblasts. Since 2022, the board of directors of the RPS has also expanded. It was joined by Eduard Galazhinsky and Igor Gaidamashko, rectors of two universities, who at the beginning of the full-scale invasion signed an open letter from the rectors to support the special military operation. And to be honest, it's not a special military operation, it's full and open war against Ukraine. At the time of signing the letter, these psychologists did not have positions in association. However, they were fact of supporting the bloody war, which aims at the genocide of the Ukrainian population, didn't prevent them from taking these positions and perhaps even contributed to them. In general, the consolidation of Russian psychologists around the war is one of the topics not sufficiently disclosed to foreign colleagues. To a certain extent, psychologists and psychotherapists are involved in propaganda, and various ways are involved in stimulating the population to participate in the war. They are engaged in changing concepts or openly spreading misinformation, for instance, spreading false information that the soldiers of the Russian army, due to some special motivation, are much less vulnerable to the development of traumatic disorders, in particular PTSD. And of course, it contradicts the world data collected after various wars and conflicts around the world. For example, Dr. Reshetnikov, a member of the RPS board, made a speech in the State Duma of Russia, it's the Russian parliament, with a report, is it necessary to stop hysteria with the possible amount of PTSD? And he said that just 3.2% of combatants might develop some specific psychotrauma, and only 39% of those will get PTSD and will need special help. And others will overcome the consequences of the war on their own. Psychologist Reshetnikov is a well-known and open agitator for the war, which he calls a historic battle, and he sees the role of psychologists in helping the population overcome doubts and worries, feeling of incomprehension, anxiety, and even fear. Another member of the RPS is Maria Kiselova, a clinical psychologist and the wife of one of the most famous modern propagandists, Dmitry Kiselov. The same propagandist who brainwashes the Russian population, and to be honest, quite effectively, and threatens the world with nuclear weapons once a week. On March 5, 2022, the National Psychological Association appealed to the European Federation of Psychologists Association with a request to exclude members of RPS organizations. After a long discussion among the members, the arguments regarding the connection of the RPS with the criminal regime turned out to be undoubtable, and the members of the board of the FPA voted to exclude the association. Two respected professional associations, the American Psychological Association and the British Psychological Society, suspended their memorandums of understanding with RPS as well. And immediately after the convening of the APA Board of Directors, RPS spread an information campaign in Russian mass media about Russophobia and prejudice on the part of Ukrainian and European colleagues in the Russian mass media, as I mentioned before. However, the very fact of exclusion from the Union was not officially communicated in any way, and RPS continued to identify itself as a member of the European Federation and to use all affiliations associated with membership. In the modern world, wars are being continued not only on the battlefield or in the informational space. Wars is happening for the minds and souls of people. Psychologists know a lot about influence and persuasion, and they can use it for different purposes. The cooperation and support of such colleagues, providing them with information platforms and intellectual resources, is support for the existing regime, which is started and continue a cynical war of aggression against another country, and which aim to destroy culture, kill people, and considers these psychologists as a resource and service. Unfortunately, psychologists, scientists, and practitioners do not always stand on the edge of politics, but often actively engaged in it. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me and I will be happy to communicate with you.